Hey guys, it's Brandon. Wanted to do another segment of the Master Game. And the game we're going to be looking at today is a game between former world champ Vladimir Kramnik and current world champion challenger Boris Gelfand, who's going to be challenging Anand for the world championship next year. And I wanted to take a look at this game because it was a really interesting way to play the Sicilian. Very positional and something I'd never really seen before, and something I'd like to adopt against the Najdorf Sicilian if should I ever decide to start playing e4 regularly. So Kramnik with the white pieces played e4, c5 from Gelfand, the Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, the open Sicilian, black takes, white retakes, and the idea is white gets the semi-open d file to play with, and black gets counterplay on the c file. In addition to having more pawns in the center now, because white exchanged the center pawn for a wing pawn. So, knight f6, attacking the undefended e pawn, knight c3, and now the move which marks which defense we're going to be playing, the Najdorf, a6. Also possible here is g6, that's the dragon, and e6, the Scheveningen Sicilian. So after a6, we have bishop e2. Now this is first a little bit of a branch from the main line. The main line Najdorf goes something like after a6, usually bishop to e3, d5, knight goes back, and then white develops with f3, queen d2, castle queenside, g4, h4, h5, and tries to sort of win a race to black castle king, and black will try to find counterplay by pushing his queenside pawns against white's king, which will be over here. In any case, bishop e2 is sort of a slower, more positional way to play this. And we see e5. Black at some point has to do something about this knight sitting here on d4, which is just so nicely placed. So he plays e5. So the one thing about e5 to keep in mind in the Najdorf is that it does leave a hole on this d5 square, since there are no pawns that can cover this square any longer. So, and also it leaves this d6 pawn a little bit weak, which is backwards and on an open file. So there's definitely some risks when you play this e5 move. And then we saw bishop e7, now bishop g5, and knight b d7. Black likes to develop the knight here onto d7 in the Najdorf Sicilian because when it's sitting here on c6, its most natural development square, it's blocking the c file. And black likes to put rooks on the c file and just try to get some pressure. It also has now contact to the c5 square, and also is watching out for his brother on f6. So that's why I usually see the development here. When you see that development before this bishop has been developed, okay, the bishop's blocked in, usually that means black is going to be looking to play b5 and bishop b7 for development. So a4. a4 is just trying to push this pawn onto a5 so that b5 is not possible in one move, or it is possible, but it'll be just taken en passant, and can mess up black's pawn structure, leave him with an isolated pawn over here. So b6 to try to stop a5, and also free the b7 square for development. Now bishop c4. Interesting that this bishop took two moves to go from its home square on f1 out to c4 when it could have just done it in one. And I think the reason that bishop wasn't played to c4 all the way back here, where was that move? Bishop e2, is because if this bishop had gone straight to c4, so if this bishop had been played straight to c4, black would play e6. This is the standard response to this is known as the Fischer-Sozin variation of the Najdorf, blunting this bishop on this diagonal. And white's whole concept in this game was to make sure that this pawn was on e5 and to have this d5 square and this weak pawn to play against. So that's why I think we saw bishop e2 first. Okay, it was a bit of a tempo slowdown, but anyway, the bishop came on to c4, eyeing this on this nice diagonal, pointing at where the black king will be, but also covering the d5 square. So bishop e7, finally getting his bishop out. Now all of his pieces are developed. Queen e2. Okay, the bishop and the knight were hitting this pawn, and the knight was the only one protecting it before that. So queen e2 just to protect the pawn. and we saw castles, and then castles. Now queen c7, getting the queen on the open file, and putting a little bit of pressure on the bishop, which is protected by the queen at the moment. So the queen can't go too far, or else this bishop will just be hanging. So rook f to d1, bringing a rook to the open file where it's attacking this weakness, and also watching out for this square e6, or d5, h6. Now here we see the first really interesting part of the game. Kramnik voluntarily gives up his bishop pair. He plays bishop takes f6. And now the reason for that is, of course, he's looking to play on this d5 square. And when he gives up this bishop for this knight, he's eliminating a piece that can protect this d5 square and giving up a piece which has no influence over this d5 square to do so. So since this bishop is dark and d5 is a light square, he willingly gives it up, and he's playing now to have a good knight coming in here on d5 at some point versus black's bad bishop. This bishop blocked in here by these pawns. So he'll play for Kramnik's going to play for sort of a blockade to keep these pawns on dark squares and try to win an endgame where he has a good knight coming in to d5 versus this bad bishop, which is blocked in by these pawns. And so he gets to it right away. Knight to d5. We have some pieces coming off on d5. Lots of exchanges. And it's important here to note that at no point does Kramnik want to play pawn takes bishop, because if there's a pawn sitting on this d5 square, then he's lost his only real advantage in the position, which is the ability to get a piece here on the d5 square, and also he'll lose any pressure on the file on this weak pawn, which is why now we see rook takes d5, leaving this d4 square open, d5 square open for a knight, and also maintaining the openness of the file so to get pressure. We see b5, so we've got to see we see clearly what Kramnik's plan is, and now Gelfand has to get something going. b5, plays c3, stopping the pawn from moving, also sort of closing down on the c file. This pawn now protected here, sort of blunts a little bit of pressure on the c file. Okay, if pawn takes, then rook takes, and it'll just be this hanging pawn over here, sort of coming under pressure. So that's why we think we see queen c4. Not particularly interested in taking. Offering a queen trade. Kramnik's not particularly interested in the queen trade, so he plays queen to c2, which he had to do that or queen to d1 because the knight was also hit. So protecting the knight. Rook f to b8, possibly getting ready to take, and then play having two pieces on the knight attacking it. So that's why we see this knight getting out of the way, just to demonstrate what I'm saying. Threatening to, if white plays something like h3, then takes, and the knight has to move because it's attacked, of course, by the pawn, the rook, the queen, and if rook takes the pawn, then the knight just falls. So, and he'll just be a piece down. So that was the tactical threat here. That's why after rook to b8, we see knight to d2 with tempo on the queen. Queen c6, queen just getting out of the way. a5, trying to just restrict black's options of counterplay on the queen side. Okay, blockading this pawn. Rook to c8. Now, possibly there's a threat of b4, at which point this pawn won't be taken because of the pin on the queen. But I think if b4, you'd probably see the move c4. And maybe Kramnik didn't like the look of b4, of having this pawn on c4, although it doesn't look too bad to me. In any case, he played queen d3, just getting out of the pin, putting some more pressure on this bishop, on this d6 pawn. Okay, it's protected by the bishop, but this bishop is really doing nothing in this position, as we can see, except watching out for this pawn here. It's got no play. It can't move anywhere, because as soon as it does, this pawn just falls. So at the moment, it's not a very good piece. So rook to b8, trying to find some more queenside counterplay. g3, okay, giving his king an escape square. Kramnik has a better position here positionally. There's no attack for either side, but he's playing on the weaknesses, and he's not in any hurry. So queen b7, knight to f1. Knight's going on a little bit of a journey, getting ready to come into here, and then eventually get itself into the d5 square, which is, of course, the dream square for this knight in this position. So, rook to c4, planning to double rooks, and here, Kramnik just says, I'm not interested in having this rook on this file. So, he kicks the rook off the file, rook comes back to c6, knight comes into e3, and g6. This move is played to prevent knight from coming in here to f5, which is a very aggressive square, eyeing the g6 pawn, and also putting pressure on the d6 pawn, the weak d6 pawn. So g6 just sort of stops, and okay, it weakens the dark squares, but black still has his dark square bishop, so that's not too big of a deal. h4, h5, sort of locking things down on the king side. Queen d2, bishop f8. Now this move is played, I think, later on the bishop comes here, and he's just looking to get this bishop some play, really. This bishop is just such a bad piece and not doing anything. He's just trying to find something active for it to do. Knight to c2, getting ready to come in here, and hopefully hop into that d5 square at some point. So, rook to c5, offering a rook exchange, but of course white doesn't want to take this rook, because if he does, black just gets a chance to eliminate his weakness. And now there's nothing really for white to play for. It's just the pawn structure is completely symmetrical, there's no weaknesses, and at this point, actually, perhaps, well, it's probably just a draw, but maybe black's even a little bit better here. So that's why we don't see rook takes c5. Instead, we say rook to d3, protecting the pawn, and also vacating the d5 square. King h7, getting ready to play bishop here. Now knight to d5. So now, of course, this knight has an awesome square to sit on. It's blockading these weaknesses. And the other thing it's doing is the only weakness that can be attacked by black at the moment is this c3 point, which is now covered by the knight. And the only thing attacking it is heavy pieces. So black would have to give up the exchange in order to grab this pawn. So that means these pieces are free to sort of do other things. Bishop h6, just trying to find some play for this bishop. Now that the knight is sort of blocking the attacks coming in here on this pawn. But queen d1 just steps out of the way. Rook to f8, probably preparing f5 here. At least if white's going to have this knight sitting here, he wants to try to get rid of this defender of the knight creating this outpost here, this e pawn, and if black gets in something like f5, and then white tries to keep a pawn on e4 with something like f3, you might see exchanges and then possibly some counterplay for black coming down now the open f file. So Gelfand is just trying to drum something up here. But unfortunately this falls to knight takes f6, check, or knight to f6 check, king to d7. Now queen comes in to protect the knight, which is of course attacked by the king, and now all of a sudden this bishop again has nothing to do. He can't even retreat, and none of these squares are really available for him to come to because they'll just be taken. So you can see that this knight is, again, just reiterating, this knight is just an awesome piece, and this bishop never manages to find anything constructive to do in the game. And with this knight here on f6 and this threat to the d6 pawn, maybe in time trouble, maybe not, Boris Gelfand made a blunder. He plays the move b4. And it's important to note that this square here, d7, is a fork square, forking these two black rooks. So the queen is guarding that square at the moment, but if that queen were to move off of the 7th rank here, that move would be able to come in and he could win the exchange. And this b4 move actually allows him to do just that, because after c takes b4, he can't really play queen takes, because the queen now would give up the move to knight d7. But that's exactly what we saw in the game. So f5 came in, but it's too little too late, because now black is just up the exchange, and now a pawn, and all the kingside pawns are falling, and this is where the game ended. Black either ran out of time, Gelfand either ran out of time, or just resigned down the exchange, and with all of these pawns soon to be falling. So many threats here. Rook takes g6, ef is a threat, because this pawn is pinned, and also it's attacked twice, so ef. And even if it wasn't pinned to this rook, gf, and then just queen takes. So the kingside pawns are falling apart. He's down the exchange, and there's really nothing for him to play for. So a really interesting way to play the Sicilian. If we just do a quick recap, we saw the open Sicilian with bishop e2, the Najdorf, coming in after that. Bishop g5, and white at some point willingly giving up this bishop now for the knight, so that he can have better control of the d5 square, and he can play for getting this knight onto the d5 square, along with pressure on the d6 point. So the good knight versus the bad bishop is the end game here. c3. So we just saw black trying to drum up some queenside counterplay, white defending, and just getting that knight, that really great knight in here on d5. And that was sort of the end of the game. From here, it's just a big advantage for white. And, coming in here with this b4 blunder, allowing takes, and then even taking with this, allowing this knight fork. Maybe he should have just played this position a pawn down. But maybe he was in time trouble. Who really knows? And the game ended here. So a real interesting way to play the Sicilian. A real something for me to keep in mind some point, and hopefully for you guys to keep in mind if you like positional, chess and not so much aggressive attacking chess. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that one, and we'll see you next time.